headlines at TheBlaze.com.
These officers did use restraint in making a very difficult decision as to whether to deploy lethal force or subdue and arrest him.
Do you think they responded appropriately?
I do not think the security plan was properly executed.
Secret Service Director Julia Pearson appeared before the House Oversight Committee today to answer questions about the agency's recent White House security shortcomings. Much of the hearing focused on the breach by White House fence jumper Omar Gonzalez on September 19th, a crime he was indicted for today on both federal and local charges. Pearson also fielded pointed questions from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who chairs the subcommittee that's actually investigating the breach, pressed Pearson on discrepancies in the agency's official account about just how far Gonzalez made it inside the White House. And as you just saw, the use of force was also at issue. Here to help us put these events in context is Dan Bongino, a former Secret Service agent, the GOP congressional candidate for Maryland's 6th District, and the author of Life Inside the Bubble, Why a Top-Ranked Secret Service Agent Walked Away from It All. Dan, were you content with the answers that you heard from Director Pearson at today's hearing?
Well, not really. I'd have a hard time even categorizing them as answers. They seem to be ducks. It looked like she was parrying jabs in a boxing match here. Ellison, they don't want to answer the questions because the answers here are going to be really uncomfortable. The Secret Service had a catastrophic security failure. There are systemic problems that don't involve the rank and file, involve the management, and she's not going to sit up there and indict herself, so they parried.
One thing that strikes people as odd, I think, is that Secret Service wasn't completely transparent when they first said how far this man actually got. At first, it seemed they implied, oh, he just kind of took a couple steps in the White House, and then he was stopped. And what we found out through reporting by the Washington Post was, no, he actually made it all the way through the hall, past the stairway that leads up to, we have a map that we can show our viewers here, past the stairway that actually leads up to where the first family lives and over into the East Room. Is there a legitimate reason for why the Secret Service would have seemingly withheld that information and not actually told the public from the beginning how far this man actually went?
No, and I don't understand what their PR strategy was. If this was a deliberate slow roll strategy, hoping the story was somehow going to dissipate, then it's the worst PR strategy I've ever seen. Here's the problem, Ellison. The Secret Service rank and file agents, the men and women, and the rank and file officers are two distinct groups of people, distinct divisions, are so frustrated with management that I'm not surprised there's probably 20 or 30 whistleblowers out there talking to the media saying, I'm sick of this. Here's what really happened. The PR department of the Secret Service is not going to be able to contain this story. It's out. The agents are frustrated. They're tired of it. They're tired of poor leadership. They want a new tomorrow here. And again, if they think they're going to slow roll it, the whistleblowers there are going to say otherwise.
Well, right, as you mentioned, Chairman Darrell Issa kind of said what you're saying here is that he said morale in the agency seems to be on the decline. And I'm curious as to when you think that actually started to happen. Was it when the Secret Service was moved under the umbrella of DHS, or is that more of a recent phenomenon? Because we have seen security blunders under different directors. We also saw in 2011 an incident that we found out later where bullets actually hit the White House and Secret Service didn't realize it for 4 days. I mean, those are consistent problems, and it's not necessarily under the same directors. So do you think that some of the problems, particularly when it comes to morale, is that a direct result of maybe the agency being moved under DHS?
It's a lot of factors, but that's a big one. The transition from the Department of Treasury to the Department of Homeland Security was a disaster. The Secret Service was a big fish in a small pond in Treasury. They're an agency that has to be relatively insulated from political and bureaucratic influence. They weren't completely insulated in Treasury, but they were far more insulated than they are now in DHS, where it seems like whatever the White House staff says and the DHS bureaucrats say, upper-level management in the Secret Service, this insulated cabal that doesn't want to change, just seems to genuflect at the knee. And the rank-and-file men and women there are left hung out to dry consistently. This is a systemic problem, Ellison. It's got to be viewed holistically here, or you're treating the wrong diagnosis.
Right.
They have a White House staff problem and a management problem.
And how do you, really quickly before we go, how do you correct that problem? Is it by bringing outside management in to actually run the agency? Should someone like Director Pearson, who has been around and in the agency for 30 years, should she step aside and let someone from outside the agency come in and manage it?
You know, I think it's time. I think it's time the agents, the rank and file agents, feel like they had a new voice and a new direction. The service's history of hiring insiders as the director has worked out sometimes, but more often than not, it's led to some pretty negative outcomes. I think it's time for an outsider to take the rose-colored glasses off and give a fresh look to the agency and a fresh tomorrow, so these men and women have a shot to do their jobs.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
California Governor